All right, do you guys see the screen?
We do, thank you.
Looks good.
All right. Well, hi, everybody. My name is Roya H. I am with Opportunities for All Hands with Disabilities. I'm in the Supported Employment and Transition Unit. Today, I'm going to give you the quickest overview of transition services with OOD. So this is just meant to be a snapshot. I believe they will share the information with you afterwards. There are links that are also in this PowerPoint that once you get it, you just click on it and go. Makes your life a little bit easier. Anyway, moving on. All right. Uh-oh, going too far. Oh, too far. So just to give a quick overview of our agency. So we are Opportunities for All Hands with Disabilities. We are overseen by the Rehabilitation Services Administration, or RSA. And so we're pretty much funded through them. Under our agency, there are 3 different bureaus. There is the Bureau of Services for the Visually Impaired. There's a Bureau of Vocational Rehabilitation Services. And then we also have the Division of Disability Determination. And so the voc rehab side primarily works with people with disabilities, help them find employment. As you can see, we have the visually impaired, which works with our blind or low vision people, and anyone else with any other disabilities will fall under the VR. As far as the Division of Disability, they do determinations for Social Security. So we are housed under the same name, but kind of function differently, as you can see. In our agency, we work with people with disabilities. And so today I'm going to mostly focus on Transition Youth, which is kind of what I do out of my unit. At OOD, we define a transition student as a student whose age is 14 to not yet 22. They're in school and they have a known or suspected disability. We call those students with disabilities, and that's how we refer to them. When we talk about transition services, we identify that as a coordinated set of outcome-oriented services for a student that promotes the shift or transition from school to work. So primarily, we are just focused with the students who are in school, who are either on their way out, or maybe that will include some post-secondary too. When we look at what our evidence-based predictors for post-school employment, so we talk about early engagement and why it's important. And so we talk about when students should be referred to OOD. And when we look at this wheel, so we always say you can kind of, no matter where you jump in on this wheel, why it's important and how these things work together. So we talk about that students who have a job at exit are 5 times more likely to be engaged in post-secondary employment and education. Parent, guardian, or caretaker expectations are essential. When students have 2 or more authentic paid work experiences. And so with our agency, we do summer youth things with our students that provide them paid work opportunities, and that helps them prepare for the world of work once they've exited high school. We also talk about when students with high peer social skills were 3.5 times more likely to be employed, meaning that we've had some early engagement with them. We've got them to start having those conversations, learn how to advocate for themselves, and it helps them with those employment skills going down the line. And then we also talk about coordination with 3 to 5 community agencies, which is kind of nice how it fits into this as far as the system of care for it. And so making sure that everybody's at that table. So whether there's a parent, if they have a social worker, if they have a DD caseworker, there's a transition coordinator. So making sure that everybody's at that table to be able to have that conversation in particular about helping the plan for that student. When we talk about transition to life after high school, things that we happen to focus on are competitive integrated employment. And so that's work that is in the community, making sure that they understand what that looks like. We look at are they interested in any type of vocational training? Maybe they're not interested in college, but maybe obtaining a trade. We also have post-secondary training, like they're thinking about going to college or doing anything like that. Maybe they're involved with other agencies. Maybe they want to transition to some adult services. Other goals are like independent living and of course, community participation. So the purpose is we want to start with the end goal in mind and then kind of consider what services are needed to reach that goal. So our process is first is that you do have to apply for services. So we do have an eligibility criteria for OOD, and everybody comes through the same door, whether you are a student and or adult. And so it starts with the application process. Once we get your application, we have technically 60 days to determine eligibility, but we have an agency goal of doing it within 30 days. When it comes with transition students, typically we get those referrals from the school. So when they send us the referrals, we will also collect things such as their medical records. Oftentimes their IEPs and ETRs are sent along with their applications. So it kind of helps speed along that process when we're determining eligibility. Then at eligibility, we kind of talk about what services are actually going to be needed. Once we've determined what that goal is and what services are going to be needed, we write what's called an IPE, which we'll talk about in a couple more slides. And then there's closure. And closure is once a student has maintained employment for a period of time, and that's once they've exited as well. So this is just to kind of give you a brief overview of kind of the general services, and it doesn't have particular dates or how long. So we will keep your case open as long as you are actively engaged in your case and up to the time you gain competitive employment. Applications for services can be completed by the self, parents, schools, local county boards, county children's services, or other community agencies. So if a student is not their own legal guardian, we do require the signature of a legal guardian. Of course, with transition youth, their parents usually are the people who sign off on it, but once they turn 18, we do ask for updated releases to be on file with us as well. We also have it on our website where you can apply directly on our website. We've made lots of changes where you can go on the website. We got something called OOD Works, and you can kind of start your application online as well. When we talk about when to apply, this is when that early engagement is essential. So we start students as early as age 14. We want to talk about, do they have a vocational need? And making sure, like, before the need becomes urgent. So we encourage students to come in. We don't want them to come in their senior year. We, if they want to come in their freshman, their sophomore year, we encourage them to go ahead and apply for services. When they're starting to talk about, hey, they want to get work experience, we want to make sure we start getting them to our door around them. And again, that's preferably no later than 2 years. Now, we do accept applications at any point, but again, that early engagement piece gives them more opportunity to participate in some of the programs that we have available that are specifically for our transition youth. We talked about eligibility just a little bit earlier. And so our criteria for eligibility is that the student or applicant has to have a documented disability that could be physical, cognitive, or mental, hearing, vision. And so with our students, we get a lot of that information from the ETR, but we can also take psychological records or their hospital records. If they have other as long as that disability is documented by a professional, we will take that information to determine eligibility. A student can also be receiving Social Security as well. And that goes for a student and or adult. They must have, their disability must make it hard for them to get and or keep a job. They must be able to benefit in terms of an outcome for services. And they must require VR services to prepare, secure, or retain employment. And so our eligibility criteria is no different from adult than it is for a student. They all have that same process. Again, it looks a little different typically from our students because a lot of the information we get does come directly from the school. Just to know, a student does not have to be on an IEP, an IEP, in order to engage in services with us. We have lots of students who may not be on an IEP that we can still serve, as long as we have that documented disability piece. And this is when we write call an IPE, not to be confused with an IEP. And so we have what we call an individualized plan for employment. We call it individualized because it is individual to whatever that student's desired goals are, and those services are going to be tailored specifically towards each student. So again, No matter whether you're a student or adult, they're going to all follow that same process. We write what's called a comprehensive assessment, and that's where we look at your disability, education, experience, goals, limitations. We look at all that information to come up with a plan. We also do something called informed choice, so that the counselor does not make all those decisions for the student. We talk about making sure that that person is heard, making sure that they've been able to identify what they want for their goal, what type of services. And so a lot of times that's when everyone's sitting at the table kind of to talk about, okay, what services are available. And then we also have some negotiations. So if they're involved in other entities, maybe they're involved with DD, and maybe DD can pay for a portion. We kind of talk about negotiation of who's going to pay for what in terms of what services are available. And even if it's not the services that we are paying for, we do like to identify them on the plan, because that's going to be part of what's going to help them reach their vocational goal. Please let me know if I'm talking too fast too, because I know we got 15 minutes, so I'm making sure we get through it. When we look at services that are specific only to our transition students, we talk about there's things like developmental activities. We have pre-employment transition services, or PreETs. There are paid work experiences. Those are typically in the summer for our summer youth work experiences. We have job development, and that's when we help them find employment. It can also include non-permanent job development, which is something that's new the last couple of years. With our non-permanent, if someone wants an after-school job, if they want an internship, that's something we can help them do. And it's non-permanent because we don't count it as their official vocational goal. We also provide on-the-job supports, and those job coaching. So once somebody is placed on the site, we can have job coaching supports in place to help that person learn their job duties, and eventually will fade over time once they've been able to be comfortable in that job. And then we also have things called our school-based readiness training, or what we call Project Search, if anyone's familiar with what Project Search is. And so most of our school JRTs are immersed in a host business. And so instead of the students going to class, they actually report to a host business and work there for the day. So they are non-paid. They usually delay graduation for that. But it's a good program, but it's for those people who have those intense needs for a longer duration to maybe catch on to some working things. It's just going to take them a longer time to get to that competitive and integrated employment goal. This is a flyer for our pre-employment transition services. And so I'll touch briefly on what PreETs is. And so with VR, for all the services that we typically provide, you do have to be eligible to be able to participate in like our summer youth, the job coaching, things like this. PreETs is different. We call it our princess or our unicorn, because it is the one service that you can get from VR where you do not necessarily have to be eligible for services. And so PreETs can be done for students who are in school, maybe whether they're eligible for services or they're not, and we consider those people to be what we call potentially eligible. There are these 5 key groups, which are going to be job exploration counseling, work-based learning, introduction to self-advocacy, counseling on post-secondary options, and workplace readiness training. So basically they can be introductory classes to get them introduced to VR, maybe when they're starting to have that conversation. It is not the only door to get into VR, but it's something. So if you have a student who's maybe involved and has several other entities, but they're not sure if they want to go the VR route, could be something they could participate in. And so when we talk about, again, who can receive those pre-employment transition services, they're going to follow that same route. They have to be 14 to not yet 22. They have to have a documented disability, and they have to be enrolled in school. And that does include homeschool. So if they're homeschooled, they can also participate in those services. The parent would just need to sign off and indicate with that they're being homeschooled. Again, you can have an open case for VR, which means you have been determined eligible for services, or you can be what we call potentially eligible. And our potentially eligible just means you don't have an open case. You won't have access to some of the other core services. You will only have access to those 5 pre-employment transition services, and maybe along with like reader or interpreter. So those are the only other exceptions. So if you have a student who's participating in the PreETs and they may need more services, we will always encourage them to apply. They can always apply at any point. They can be in the middle receiving those 5 services and say, you know, I think I want to go forward with VR, and they can apply right in the middle. So again, our potentially eligible are students ages 14 and not yet 22, enrolled in school and documented disability. So just kind of to touch base on, bring that home a little bit, that they do not have to have an open case. There is not an application. If you come through our potentially eligible door, those referrals come directly from the school. So it follows a little bit different process. So the school makes that referral directly to VR for those pre-eds. And so there's a form that the school fills out that needs to be signed by the school saying that they want to engage in just those 5 services. We still need that same documentation. So a lot of that is sent along with that referral. And all of it, our form can be found online, and it actually kind of goes over what we need to make those determinations, whether they can receive pre-eds or not. Again, potentially eligible just means that you don't have an open case with OOD, meaning you've not made an application for services. So just to kind of reiterate, pre-eds is not an application for services. It's just those 5 core services. They kind of get that, sort of get those wheels started, as we say. When we're looking at closure for students with a disability, services with OOD are time limited. And so what we look at is they've been able to maintain employment for a period of 90 days or longer without supports. And so typically you can have a student, maybe they've exited high school, they found a job, we've job coached them, and we've started fading away job coach. So we get to the point where we consider them to be stable, and then we count from 90 days from that point before we close their case. The nice thing is that should they lose their job, should something change, they can always reapply for services. We have a nice revolving door so they can come back as many times as they need services. The only other reason we would close students' case because maybe they haven't made any progress towards employment, maybe their disability has become too severe, and maybe now it's not the time to engage in services. So long as you're actively engaged in services and working towards an employment goal, we will continue to keep your case open until you've reached your vocational goal. This is just a quick plug for our Youth Leadership Forum. It is geared towards high school juniors or seniors. And if you have a high school person who's interested in self-advocacy and leadership, it's a good thing we do. It is pretty, I will say it's a pretty cool program. It used to only be in Columbus for like 1 week, but now we've been able to branch it out. So it is in 5 different regions throughout the state. And then we still have that one statewide one. I'm not sure for virtual, I think we're coming back in person this year, but don't hold me to that. So they do have to be eligible for services, and applications are kind of due now. So if you have someone who's a junior or senior and they have an open case with OOD, or maybe they don't, they're interested, this would be it's a really good program. It is led by, but it's actually led by the people who've been in the program. So all the mentors in the program are people who've technically been through this whole program before. The governor usually comes down. You have other leaders that come in and talk with the students to kind of help them promote that advocacy and leadership role. So it's a pretty neat program. Donna Foster out of my unit is the person who kind of runs that. And this is just a quick screenshot of our website, gives you an idea where to find us specifically for transition students. So they're ood.ohio.gov. You can look under individuals with disabilities, and we have a page that's called Students 14 Plus that's specifically designed for students with disabilities. So all the things that I've referenced today are going to be located on this page. You can also see where you can look for the youth leadership information, request for pre-eds, and the other fact sheets or things we have out there. So if you have more questions about what services we provide, it's all on our website as well. This is our Connecting Students with Work flyer. It is just a flyer we use to kind of engage people in services, get them, like if you need to know what VR is, we kind of have these flyers available as hard copies. We give these out to parents, we give these out to schools, other entities that says, you know, if you have a student who's interested in work, a student with a disability in particular, how to get them to our front door. It talks about identifying it, where you can get an application. We do provide services in all 88 counties, and we do serve all school districts. So we do have liaison counselors that are assigned to each school everywhere. So we also have a partnership with ODE, which is our OTSP, which is Ohio Transition Support Partnership, where we specifically have liaisons directly with certain schools. And so we have over 95,000 students on IEPs in Ohio. They are not all on our caseloads, but we've identified those people. And so we work specifically with schools to kind of identify those students to see what services we can provide for them. Just a little bit more literature. These are just, are you in high school postcards? Talk about, you want to earn money, what's next? It has a cute little QR code that you can scan. It kind of gets you to our front page. Again, these are just literature we have that we can pass out that is available to kind of engage that conversation. We also have the Are You in College postcard. We have a college to careers program that we just started a few years ago. So we actually have counselors that are embedded in a few Ohio colleges around the state that specifically work with youth with disabilities. And so once they've graduated, they go from a student to youth, or maybe there's somebody who's an adult as well. So we have people who are interested in college, maybe even adults or students. We do have a few counselors that are embedded in the colleges that will specifically work with them, making sure they have accommodations. We can assist paying for school, and that's going to be on an individual, case-by-case basis, or maybe help to set up internships that are needed while they're in school as well. And that is a short and sweet version of OOD transition services. Again, we're in the Supported Employment and Transition Unit. My supervisor is Julie Hance. Donna Foster is also administrator. She's the one over the YLF. And I am Roya Hood, kind of like row your boat, easiest way to remember it. And I do mostly transition, and I am statewide coordinator for Project Search. So, and that is kind of the end of my presentation.